And it is time once again for another AEW Dynamite review here on the MrWarrenHayes Show. Greetings and salutations. I'm Warren. It is Thursday. It is March 13, 2025. We are going to be reviewing the Dynamite that happened last night on March 12. Hope you're having a good week so far, by the way. Hope you're enjoying yourself. I know I am. It's time to interrupt your week as it's going forward to sort of slide in here and start talking some Dynamite. Like I said, March 12, Fresno, California, at the Save Mart Center at Fresno State. 3,481 tickets were distributed according to WrestleTix. This is not the final count. This is the last update that WrestleTix gave us yesterday. As you know, I record these on the Thursday, so we don't have exactly the final count on that front, but again, pretty good, a pretty good attendance that seems to be, again, going upward. We've seen progressions. We've seen live gates for Dynamite slowly improve. If you consider that that AEW was in this very building 2 years ago in 2023 on January 18, and they were packing in 5,111 people, or at least distributed tickets. You can see just how much we've fallen and how much, as I like to say here, consumer confidence has been rattled when it comes to the weekly shows. I think the pay-per-views are something completely else. But when it comes to the TV shows, as we talk a lot about here on the show, there's a little more work that needs to be done to regain the ticket buyer confidence. Look, relative to AEW's business for the past year or so, I think this is pretty good. But the venue felt packed. It was another really good audience. Like the decisions that they made to pivot and to do these smaller rooms are absolutely paying off. We talk about it often on the reviews here. So I think last night was indicative of that as well. But I want to start talking about the show. I want to get into the show. A show that I think will be under my recurring theme recently of good shows. Look, here's the cliff notes. I liked last night's show, and I think I liked last night's show for a lot of really good reasons that are making AEW feel like things are on an upward trajectory, that things are getting slowly better for them. I think the show has been extremely solid over the past couple of months, barring a couple of exceptions, but overall the show has been solid. I think the build to Revolution was indicative of that. You'd be hard pressed to find anyone, I think, being straight up a negative about how Revolution was built up. I think it was practically impeccable. And I think one of the reasons for that is because AEW has sort of reverted back to putting on TV and in big spots people that the audience actually wants to see in these spots. You will notice that over the past few weeks, and I'm not saying it's been perfect, right? But over the past few weeks, the directions have been clear. The people that have been put in these spots are people truly that fans want to see. I don't think anyone was excited at the idea of a Jeff Jarrett main event run or whatever they were trying to do there. I think a lot of people were scratching their heads wondering what the hell are we doing with Private Party in this kind of spot. But you see, there's been a lot of pivots. There's been a lot of changes, or at least focus put on the people who truly make AEW special, that incite the fans to tune in and watch. Putting Hangman and MJF in a feud is a great indication of that. Swerve going back to his winning ways. Kenny Omega being in big spots. Will Ospreay being in big spots. And it just so happens the supporting cast are all people as well that the audience are excited about as well, that people can get behind too. You know, the Kyle Fletchers, the Konosuke Takeshitas, you know, even Ricochet now as well. So I feel like this concept, this wild and wacky concept of putting on TV people that your fan base is excited for suddenly makes the product feel better, makes it feel hotter. I'm not saying that we've achieved levels of hotness that have never been seen before. That's not what I'm saying, but you do feel like there is a different vibe to it. And it's crazy how putting the people that should be in those spots can change the whole dynamic. Isn't that unique? Isn't that crazy? And on top of that, these are people who can deliver great matches. So, it's all been a thing where AEW seems to have a steady direction, a clear knowledge of where they want to head to. And I think that's significant. I think both things right now are working very, very well together, because we'll talk about the show, of course, but not only do I think, but it's, they've actually started doing it. After last night's show, you can actually see directions for All In, which is 3 pay-per-views away still, because we still have to go through Dynasty, which is in a couple of weeks, Double or Nothing, which is in May, and then we get to All In, which again is still, down the line, but you can already see people starting to paint a picture. You can start seeing through lines to that, and that is very interesting. That is very, very, very interesting to me, and I think should make people feel confident. Right now, it is necessary, I believe, because we have been burned in the past, and I think it's important to do this. It's important to keep AEW at arm's length. I'm not, I don't want to sound like I'm sitting here and suddenly saying, we are so back, baby, or feeling restored or whatever. Especially, I don't think I'll be saying that anytime soon anymore. We have to stay frosty when it comes to AEW, because look, it's still the same people who are in charge that have been in charge and sort of give us some weird and wacky moments that sort of failed us on some follow-ups. All the usual issues that AEW might have can potentially rear their head. And when you see AEW starting to promote the main event for next week's Dynamite, which is going to be Jon Moxley versus Adam Copeland 2, essentially, coming off of a horrendous main event at Revolution, a match that is universally panned, you kind of wonder. You kind of just like scratch your head and you're like, okay, well, are we really doing something different? Can we truly pivot from an Adam Copeland main event scene situation? Because I thought we were going to jettison that shit and have some program start up with Jay White or Christian Cage or whatever, but instead we're going to retread a match that, as I said on Blue Sky, no one asked for. I don't know who's asking for this. I don't know who's even looking forward to this. I've seen apologists. Okay? I've seen apologists say, oh, well, clearly, this is they probably went backstage, talked to Tony and said, Tony, we'd like to have a redo. Yes, this is clearly it. You are correct. That I think that's a fair assessment that, some things were adjusted to try and redo the match and wash the taste out of our mouths over that one. Sure, I get that, but it still doesn't answer the situations like who asked for this? Who wants this? I did not see a single person anywhere after Revolution coming up to stick up for Mox versus Copeland. I did not see it anywhere. So I don't know what the thought process here is outside of giving the guys the opportunity to do it over in a street fight, which is probably the best idea because then they'll be able to use, plunder and gimmickry to hide whatever they need to hide. You know what I mean? They'll have they'll be able to mask any weaknesses and use the plunder street fight environment to heighten the strengths and whatever. It's smoke and mirrors. It's trickery. It's fine. Don't get me wrong. They probably should have done that at the pay-per-view to begin with. But when I see this type of situation happen, I can't help but wonder that why are we doing this? What is this? Why are we immediately going back to this when there are so many different directions that your fans want you to go in? And yet we're deciding to go back, revisit this match, which was, like I said, I think a critical and popular disaster. I don't think anyone, I think it's a match that's been universally, like I said, universally panned. And it's these types of little situations that make me scratch my head then when it comes to AEW. And and then I'm like, well, I do well to keep them at arm's length. I should still keep them away, keep them at a safe distance, I should say, because they can turn around and do stuff like this, which is incomprehensible and still very strange. And I really don't know what they have up their sleeve. I really don't. And, this is not to say, and I've talked about it, but I also want to make it, I just want to make sure it's clear if there's anyone popping in here for the first time. I am not part of the crews, the individuals out there, the mindset that Jon Moxley needs to lose the title as soon as possible and whatnot. I think Jon Moxley has truly suffered from some bad booking decisions. I think his run has stunk because his opponents as I think I even covered this last week. His opponents were either guys that you don't that aren't perceived as top guys, or he was saddled in situations with like a four-way where you're like, well, who cares, right? But no one sees Orange Cassidy as a top guy. No one sees Jay White as a top guy. I don't think AEW fans really wanted Adam Copeland in a world title picture. I think that's something that we don't talk about much, but I think there was a low-key rejection by AEW fans in general in regards to that. I think if we're moving, well, we most likely will. I know they're keeping the door open that it might not be Moxley who'll be world champion after next week for understandable reasons. But if we're moving towards Swerve versus Mox, I think that has the possibility to be a much more interesting matchup for Jon Moxley and a much better feud. I would even, and this might not be the popular take, but I would even be very interested in seeing Jon Moxley versus Will Ospreay at All In the main event, and Will Ospreay winning his first world champion off of the guy who hijacked basically the title for the past, well, since last fall, essentially, and get a proper payoff to all of this. I'm thinking, right? I think there's also a case to be made for Bryan Danielson coming back for one match, and that match being against Jon Moxley, and I think that's probably a bigger match overall. But you know what I'm saying. It's I'm not ready. I know a lot of people are ready to jettison the whole thing, the whole Jon Moxley run. I'm not. I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think they showed, like in the 3 to 4 weeks leading into Revolution, that they could pivot and make this interesting. That if the directions are good and clear and everyone knows what they need to do, I think that a Jon Moxley title reign can and should be interesting. The elimination of the Death Riders week after week showed that they got a grasp on what they need to do with it, because it was good. It's hard to deny that it was towards the once they decided to do that pivot after Grand Slam Australia, everything sort of fell into place and it became really, really good. It was disjointed previous to that, but then focus. They got focused on what they needed to do and it started to pay off. I think this is still possible. I think it's absolutely still a thing that can happen. I know a lot of people have given up and are ready to say, okay, put the belt on Swerve. I don't even know if I'd do that. I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I like Swerve. I like me some Swerve. But I don't know. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to toss that aside just yet. Not just yet, anyway. But yeah, like I just wanted to get the main event announcement for next week. Don't get me wrong. I'm not excited about it. I think it's kind of silly. It made me laugh. And like I said, ultimately what it proves is that we should always we need to keep AEW at arm's length nonetheless, because I don't think that this is, I don't want to say it's tone deaf really. I just, it's because I think that might be a little harsh, but it is a very odd booking decision to just go ahead and rebook two guys who were in a match that people that people just did not like, to cap off a pay-per-view that everyone ultimately liked. That was a tremendous show from top to bottom. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go. Let's start talking about the show. Started off with Kenny Omega coming to the ring, new AEW International Champion, to give a little speech, a little celebration in front of the crowd. Talks about just being happy to wrestle again after his health scare. Puts over Konosuke Takeshita for pushing him harder at the pay-per-view than he could have pushed himself in another circumstance. And really does put Takeshita over. Not a big surprise. And then he, puts over the Dynasty Eliminator Tournament that's starting on this very edition of Dynamite, and is ready to face the champion, whoever wins it, I should say, at Dynasty. So there you go. By the way, I like tournaments. I don't know if this is a tournament as much as qualifiers. It's not really a tournament. It's just qualifiers for a 4-way. So it's not really like a tournament. Yeah. I like the idea that there being, people from different nationalities truly making it international, right? You have the Australian, you have the Canadian, you've got Mexican in here as well. So I'm kind of like, okay, it's pretty good. Again, there's at least some thought put into it. They didn't just announce this, a couple of hours before the start of Dynamite. It's like, no, this is actually pretty good. A pretty good setup, and I enjoy it too. I like tournament wrestling, but I don't know if I'd call this a tournament more than these are qualifiers for the 4-way. Maybe I'm just a little, maybe I'm hanging on semantics a little bit, but words are important. Words are important. The Opps come out as Kenny Omega walks to the back as Katsuyori Shibata, crosses his arms and gives old Kenny the old look over, which is very interesting. And that leads us to the match where the trios match where Samoa Joe, Katsuyori Shibata, and Hook defeated the trio of Eli Theseus, Gabriel Aeros, and Vinny Pacifico. And this was a good little match. I enjoyed it. Tremendously. And was used to put over Shibata as a killer, which is a good idea, especially if you're about to set him up in some kind of thing with Kenny Omega. This is essentially what happened. Shibata won after landing a PK. So there you go. Leads us to backstage where Ricochet is there, says that his quest for championship gold is not over, and he's glad that he's a part of the Dynasty Eliminator tournament, and for the international title, of course. And he starts shit talking Shibata, and because he's about to face him next on Collision this Saturday, and says, hey, I'm giving you an opportunity to quit. Don't show up. I'm granting this to you. And I thought that was good. I thought that was funny. Like, of course, like, it's absolutely the kind of thing that a heel character like this guy would do. I thought it was tremendous. I legitimately thought it was tremendous. Ricochet continues to do really good work. Swerve Strickland is backstage. I believe this was taped at After Revolution. He's backstage. He's talking about making history at Dynasty last year, becoming the first Black AEW champion, and what would be a more fitting place than to win the title again at Dynasty this year. Adam Copeland shows up, suggesting that, I really didn't lose the title. And yes, we know you didn't get pinned, Adam. Yes, we do. We know. We're fully aware. We're fully aware that you have not lost clean a single time since coming to AEW. We're fully aware of this. But Copeland basically says, he might be the champion by Dynasty, or he'll be the one to take the title off of Swerve, or whatever. John Moxley has a few words for Adam Copeland, calls him a great opportunist, which is something that we used to call him in WWE. When I say we, I mean WWE. Basically talking about his strategy and whatnot, and reminds everyone that he's a professional amongst amateurs, and that professionals don't make the same mistake twice or whatever. Anyway, again, like a good promo by Moxley. They're still always very good. Then we had like this absolutely wild match that was being put together before my eyes. And I was like, and I didn't see necessarily the card beforehand on social media, so I don't know if this was announced but we had Hologram come out, accompanied to the ring by Harley Graham and Powerhouse Hobbs. I'm like, wait, what? It took me a second to process that, versus Brian Cage, and then I was like, Murder Machines. No, Brian Cage and Dralistico, and all tying in a bunch of stories into this tag team match. So I get it. This was all fine until Dralistico started botching the hell out of the match. Look, I don't want to spend an exorbitant amount of time talking about Dralistico and how good he is or not. When AEW failed to sign Dragon Lee and instead got Dralistico because he's Rush's brother, there's a lot of people out there kind of not exactly on the same level, right? And no, not exactly on the same level at all. But yeah, I enjoyed this. I thought it was a nice little 3-star TV match. I didn't have any issues with it. Hobbs continuing to get big TV time is also great, and he got the win here by doing a huge spine buster on Dralistico. Yeah, and I thought, I thought the action was good. It was fine. Nothing that'll tear the house down, but it was solid. It was good. 3.25. I don't know, something like that. Fine little TV match. We have the Hurt Syndicate backstage. Basically, MVP is trying to give them the week off, saying you guys work hard. You need some recreation. Shelton and Lashley are like, no, we got to go train. Maybe we'll play a bit, but then we also have to hit Gold's Gym and go do whatever it is you do when you muscle train. And so that segment sort of wraps up there. It's fine, basically establishing that these guys are all business. So that's. It's a good vibe to have. I find it stands out in this in the AEW environment. I think it works out really well. But this would not be the end. This would not be the last time we see MVP on this show. Next we get a little recap of the Mariah May Toni Storm feud. Toni Storm then comes out to cut a promo with the sole spotlight on her. She talks about her resilience and her, how tough she is, and not criticizes, but talks about, how there's so many champions. She compares herself to a zoo, compares wrestling to her like an orgy. There was one guy in the audience who was tremendous and had perfect timing. After she talked about the orgies, she took a bit of a pause, and this one guy in the audience calls out, "Can I come?" And that was fantastic. Like, props to that dude. That was really funny. And as her segment ends, Megan Bayne attacks her from behind, completely blindsides her. So looks like this is the program we're heading into. Interesting. I don't know if I'd do that. I don't know if I'd go with I don't know if I'd go with someone new, completely unproven still to the AEW audience, and just like drop her in here. I don't know if it's just something where Megan Bayne wants to make a statement across the locker room or whatever. I'm not exactly sure that this is the best thing right now, but look, because it's not as if there's no one else on the roster who could be challenging, right? It's not as if there's no one else that the audience knows and is attached to who could be challenging for the world title, right? Then we get the AEW International Title Eliminator Tournament first round match, where the Beast Mortos took on the wild card, who turned out to be Speedball Mike Bailey, like a lot of people had deduced. It made a lot of sense, and he did a debut here in a really good match. I thought this was a particularly strong match. I loved the second half of it. I thought it was a really good pairing when everyone was speculating as to whether or not it would be Speedball or not. I was like, it's probably Speedball, because Mortos will be a great base for him. Like that'll be one of Mortos's biggest strengths as a pro wrestler, is to be able to do that. And I thought that it was a really smart pairing. Turns out it was a really smart pairing, and because the match ended up being really, really good. A top tier match. I thought it was really, really good. Bailey showed off a lot of his inventory of moves. He did keep a few in store. There's a couple of his classic moves that he didn't pull out here, like the moonsault knees on the apron. He didn't do that. He didn't win the match with the Ultimo Weapon as well, which is technically his finisher. He finished it with the roundhouse, not the roundhouse, the windmill kick, taking Mortos down. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a fun match. It was a good little debut for Speedball. I'm glad for Speedball. I'm happy for Speedball Mike Bailey, a guy who, not only is, one of ours here in Quebec, but, a guy who has worked really, really hard. He's been all over the place. He's been perfecting his craft. He's been taking his time, choosing his opportunities really, really wisely. And I think it's paying off. And on top of that, from everything I understand, one of the nicest guys in the business. Like a guy that everyone likes to work with. I like the pickup for AEW, and I think he's going to fulfill a terrific role here. And if he's the guy who ends up fighting Kenny Omega at Dynasty, that'll be tremendous, right? That'll just be great. It'll be a great showcase. But you know who I would really like, and I think it's a dark horse pick, but it's also a pick that would really give us a really, really interesting match. And that would be Omega versus Mark Briscoe. And Mark Briscoe being, such a soldier for AEW, a guy who always gives it 100% and works incredibly hard every time he's in the ring and delivers and does what he's told. If there was ever a moment where you'd be like, well, we'll give it to Mark because Mark deserves this huge big match spotlight against Kenny Omega, right? I think we'd go, and I think a lot of us would be surprised at how fucking good it'd be. That being said, I wouldn't be disappointed if it was Speedball. I'm just throwing out there the idea, not to start campaigning or anything, but the idea of Mark Briscoe getting this match against Omega. I think there's a lot of good to that. It makes a lot of sense, and it would be really surprising. I'm sure we'd all be surprised at how good it would be. The Patriarchy are backstage. Christian Cage doesn't want to talk to Renee Paquette because she's related to Jon Moxley, and also she's a dumb blonde. And he wants his contract back because he states that the referee didn't. That the referee started the match and made it a triple threat when Christian Cage made it clear that it was a one-on-one with Adam Copeland, which of course doesn't make sense, right? Why would he make it a one-on-one with Adam Copeland and Adam Copeland not being involved in not being the champion, right? So of course his excuse is complete bullshit, and Nick Wayne sort of sees through it and he says, "Look, these are excuses. This is bullshit." Christian Cage takes offense to that. Mother Wayne tries to jump in, tries to jump in to defend her boy. He, being Christian, says, "You better step back, or else I'll send you back to doing the night shift, the midnight shift at the Waffle House." So she steps away, and Christian basically dares Nick to do something about it, knowing that he won't, because Christian Cage has a hold on these people. That's the idea, right? He's like a cult leader. He's part cult leader and part just slimy mob type guy, where he's just got these people by the throat, essentially, right? That's not mob guy. It's just like stupid, not just like a supervillain. He's just got supervillain energy to him. And Kip Sabian seems to be on Christian's side on this, as the Waynes stand back and sort of watch him walk away. So a little dissent there, a little starting of something again. We're establishing, we're just setting up some things, setting up some little breadcrumbs here to see where this leads down the line. But I'm glad that, look, if they want to start doing something with Nick Wayne, I'm completely for it. Lexi Nair is backstage at Revolution. This is a pre-tape. She walks into MJF's locker room, where he is berating himself as he stares at himself in a mirror, then punches the mirror to shatter it. And that leads us to MJF hitting the ring to cut a promo, where he says his loss to to Hangman was a fluke. And that, and basically saying he's better than Hangman and so on and so forth. That brings out MVP. To the surprise of many, I don't think anyone really saw this coming. Did you see this coming? I like that. It was a little surprising. And I perked right up, kind of like what I'm doing right now. I perked right up. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And MVP talks about how we met MJF like 8 years ago. And MJF, wanted to ask him questions. He was 18 years old and was just asking questions about the business and learning. And he said, I always saw something in you. And then he offers MJF his business card, essentially to join the Hurt Syndicate. And MJF declines at first, but by the end of the promo, he's got the card in his hand and he tucks it in his jacket, where he then sort of leaves it as such and walks away looking pensive as Max can be. I don't think MJF is joining the Hurt Syndicate. I don't think that's actually something that is going to happen. It would be bold, would be unique at the very least, but I don't think it's happening. I don't think we're going down that direction. I have the impression, though, that I have the impression that Max is going to find a way to use the Hurt business to his advantage. I think that's mostly where we're going with that. But yeah, look, I liked it. I thought it was a surprising little turn of events. Didn't see it coming. That was pretty good. Max Caster has his open challenge, of course, setting himself up to lose. And to whom shall he lose to this week? Well, it is against Konosuke Takeshita, who just barges out. He's all business, takes his coat off. He's ready to kick the shit out of Max Caster. Max Caster interrupts him and says, oh, you're obviously here to offer me a spot in the Don Callis family. Wrong. Takeshita squashes him with a huge elbow. And then does the spinning, burning fire gimmick and gets the win. So also, as well, keeping Konosuke Takeshita in the conversation, which I think is very good and also very interesting. We get a backstage promo from Chris Jericho, who's sitting there holding Gravity's mask like he's Hamlet holding Urik's skull. And basically says, Bandito, I humiliated you in front of your family. Ha ha ha. Essential stuff. But leaning into this idea that Chris Jericho is no longer a laughingstock, that people need to be taking him seriously, that you can't just mock him anymore. You just can't go around making fun of Chris Jericho willy-nilly. It's serious business. Pro wrestling is serious business. So, clearly Bandito's going to be Ring of Honor World Champion again. I think isn't it clear? I think it's pretty clear at this point. They're clearly setting this up. We'll see how it goes. Willow Nightingale defeats Penelope Ford. It's a nice little match. Nothing more, seen a lot of people go a little overboard with it, but, it was fine. It was fine. Designed for Willow to get a big win on TV. Well, a big win, a big TV win, I should say. And looking good in the process. She hit her spots. She hit the pounds. She won with the pounds, right? Didn't even need to do the doctor bomb, the babe with the power bomb. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. It was fine. Got Willow back out there. That's good. This led to the post-match where Penelope Ford does the weakest post-match attack on Willow Nightingale that I have seen in a long time. Weak ass chair shot. Then, some ground and pound that just looked completely awful. And Chris Statlander runs in to save Willow Nightingale, sort of hoping to reestablish their friendship that Stokely Hathaway broke up, and she drives off. Penelope, both women sort of stare at each other, Willow, Chris, which then allows Megan Bayne again to run in and blindside both of them, taking both of them out. And she even takes out Chris Statlander with an F5. So, Megan Bayne clearly establishing her territory, making sure that everyone understands that, she's going to be a force to be reckoned with. We move on to Mercedes Moné, who is being interviewed by Renee Paquette. And she says that she's recovering from a larynx injury, and you can see a hell of a bruise on Mercedes' face, right where Momo kicked her right in the chin. That was such a vicious kick, and just seeing the bruise there, you're like, holy shit, okay, that's big time. So, props to Mercedes for being back doing her thing. I don't know how much of a work it is or not that she can talk or barely talk or whatnot, but she plays off of that. Billy Stark shows up and essentially challenges Mercedes to a match next week. Then we have the Will Ospreay in-ring promo with Tony Schiavone. Here's something that we should mention before going any further here. The baby faces all came out to celebrate with the audience, and not in a championship celebration gimmick. Just come out, cut a promo, rah, we're all in a good mood, everyone's happy. Yeah, and that also is good. You see what I was saying earlier at the start when I'm talking about, putting on TV, the people, the fans want to see. Well, they wanted to see Kenny. They wanted to see Will. And that's what the audience got. And that AEW needs to do more of this, right? So Ospreay comes out. He's selling the hip. He's showing off his injuries, saying this one here, lifts his shirt and says this one here, I don't even know how I got that one. And then tells an incredible, well, it's not incredible, but spins a yarn about how his wife, Alex Windsor, told him to not do anything stupid. And then he does the Spanish fly off the cage. And then she calls him and, says, I'm glad you're safe, but then berates him. And then he says, don't worry, love, or something to that effect. Don't worry, love. I'll be home on Friday and I'm going to cook you a lovely meal and I will give you a good seeing to, or something to that effect, right? A seeing to. The most British expression ever, which is tremendous. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I couldn't help but laugh. It's like, look, darling, I know you're upset, but when I get home, I'm going to give you the best sex of your life. It's like that episode in The Office, right? Where Roy, the guy who, was it Roy? Yeah, the guy who was Pam's boyfriend before Jim, when he says for Valentine's Day, it's like, oh baby, I'm going to take you home and I'm going to give you the best sex of your life. It's like, that's not a gift. So I couldn't help but not find that infinitely funny. However, that being said, Will basically reveals that he wants to be in the world title situation. Look, he's done with all the nonsense with the Don Callis family, so that's clearly in the rear view. And now he's focusing on being world champion, which I think is tremendous. And he says, I want to be at All In. I'm going to be in the main event, which again is tremendous. And I'm going to do it by entering the Owen tournament, which is great. The Owen hasn't started yet. This is the first mention that we have of it. So starting to build some anticipation for that. Starting to build some anticipation for All In, which is tremendous. So you see, we're already building, like I said earlier, we're already building shows that are months removed from now. Just starting to lay the foundations for things. And that's why I have some level of confidence on the directions that AEW are going to give, because they do seem to have plans. Now, you can argue, well, Warren, AEW has always had plans, and sometimes they like their plans so much that they don't want to pivot from those plans. True. So again, I think I can be I think I can be optimistic about how things are going, but without being completely blind and, an absolute fool. Where it's like, no, don't worry, guys, gals, non-binary pals. All of this is going to be great. Don't you worry. The AEW's got its act together. Everything's all right. I'm not going to do that. But I think I think you can have some. I think it's okay to have some optimism in this situation because recently things have been on an upswing. All signs point to that upswing continuing. The direction, the vision that they have right now. So, look, have Ospreay go through everyone in the Owen. Have Ospreay go to All In. You put him in the main event. You give us MJF and Hangman who try to burn each other alive. We're gonna talk about that in a second, right? We're put Kazuchika Okada and Kenny Omega in a match. They're really setting the stage for some really big matches at the biggest stadium show they'll have ever held in the United States. So they're really making some good decisions. And I know we have a tendency to want to nitpick, and that's all right. That's fine. We should. That's okay. But I think there's a good, interesting course that they're on right now, which is observable, that has produced positive results on top of that. And I think it's okay to get optimistic about that. Yes, I'm still keeping everything at arm's length, but I have to point out that what's going on right now is pretty interesting. I think it's good, and they're making some good decisions as far as the booking goes. And I think eventually it will translate into more tickets, better business. It has to. That's basically how the business goes. We follow it up with Jay White congratulating Will Ospreay on his international title win, and basically reestablishes the fact that he's been taking out the Death Riders. He should also be in the conversation for the World Championship. A lot of guys, I like this because they did this around the Samoa. I think it was for the Samoa Joe Championship, or no, it wasn't. But there was a time. There was a time during MJF's reign where there were a bunch of guys talking about, I'm going to come after the World Championship. I'm going to come after the World Championship, so on and so forth. And I like that because it makes it interesting and it makes your title feel important. It does make your world title, feel like it is the centerpiece of the company. If you got a bunch of guys who are eyeing it, I think it's really interesting. I think it's very, very interesting. Now, we can have conversations on how Jay White is handled in AEW. I think Jay White is a guy that if they wanted to throw some support behind, he'd get over in a flash as a top guy. But look, I don't know. Maybe that is the plan. Maybe that's part of the plan right now. An elevation of Jay White, which I would not be against. That would be tremendous. But again, we're going to have to let this one breathe a bit. Breathe with the switchblade. Then we have the backstage segment between Adam Page and MJF. Basically, this one here was Page telling MJF, you wanted to set me on fire, but you couldn't do it. Next time follow through. And MJF is like, bet. So I'm terrified now. I'm getting flashbacks of flaming tables and Brandy Rhodes pouring, starter liquid and Cody Rhodes getting scarred for life. I don't know what they'll do next. Maybe MJF will just set Hangman's car on fire. They might just do that too. It's very interesting because, again, in this promo, these are two guys who get each other's number, right? They understand each other. And, Hangman basically saying, look, I see right through you. You say you don't care what the audience says or feels about you, but you really do. And I see through that. And MJF is like, well, I see through you as well, because you're super insecure about you're super insecure about your own acceptance, because you're afraid that your insecurity is that you don't deserve their love and you don't, so, I really enjoy these two playing off of each other. And I don't know how the Hurt Business, Hurt Syndicate connects into this. But I enjoy it. I'm really digging it. I think it's good. And then this leads us to the main event where Orange Cassidy defeats Hechicero to move on to the 4-way for the international title next week. This was an AEW International Title Eliminator Tournament first round match. I didn't think this was particularly good. I think I don't think both of these guys really meshed well together. The finish was the finish wasn't great. Clearly, Orange Cassidy was supposed to do one of his, satellite stuff, just, circulating around the base of Hechicero, right? And then was supposed to, roll him up into the seat belt and get the win. But, Hechicero either didn't know exactly what was going on, didn't know how to react. It kind of fell apart. The finish, unfortunately, kind of fell apart. So, I called it the seatbelt, but it was the mousetrap. Sorry. It's the mousetrap. The seatbelt is the other guy. This one's the mousetrap. I thought this would have been better. Hechicero's tremendous. I think he's tremendous, and he's, one of my top CMLL guys. And I was excited for this too, but it kind of fell flat, quite frankly. That being said, I enjoyed the idea that, I enjoyed the idea of Tony Khan calling back on his contacts to bring in some guys from, internationally to be a part of his international title tournament. I really liked that, even though it was only really Hechicero because everyone else is signed. I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a nice touch, and AEW should do that more. And, it kind of reminded me of the days where we just get cool matches for no reason. Something I was talking about not all that long ago right here on this podcast, on this very review, where I was saying everything has stories. Can't we just have random cool matches as well? I miss those. And now it wasn't a random match. There was a very distinct purpose to it. But still, it kind of had that vibe for it. And I was like, oh, so wonder who's taking notes. And after the match, Speedball Mike Bailey comes out at the ramp to stare down Orange Cassidy because we're all too stupid to understand that these two guys are going to be in the match next week. So apparently we had to do that. And that's the show. I enjoyed it. Lots of things being established, lots of directions being clarified, solidified, or just brand new directions. Seeds being sown, new ideas being thrown out there. A lot of good stuff on this show. I overall really liked it. I find AEW to be on a really good trajectory so far. So, if they can continue to build on that, they're off to a terrific start this year. I think their first quarter overall, when it comes to the creative aspect of the show, has been very successful. Can only hope it continues. But I will not continue this review. We're going to wrap it up right now. Thank you all very much for watching today. Leave a like if you're watching this on YouTube. A 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify also helps. If you're listening to this on the Thursday, I will be back later today to stream on the YouTube channel. Otherwise, look, I'll be back for the MrWarrenHayes show next Wednesday. So thank you all very much for listening. Go watch some Randy Orton and get back to it. And I'll see you next time.